So Dr. Storer reminded us that sitting is the new smoking, right? So I am here to offer everybody a second virtual espresso because since it's virtual, it can't hurt you. So everybody stand up, please. All right. Some were like, yeah, I liked it. Some said I didn't like. All right, so remember, chin position up because we're really happy. Hands going side by side. Faster, faster, looking up at the ceiling, smiling, really happy, smiling very big, chin up, faster, 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 keep going, faster, stop. We have 2 more speakers before the break. Next will be Dr. Heidi Rula, who is also a concierge medical physician. You're welcome to sit down, by the way. Yeah. Oh, what a great group. A concierge medical physician at LifeScape Premier. She's also worked with Dr. Andrew Weil. And so she will be talking about your life spark. And then Dr. Rob will wrap up our speakers for the day. He is one of the very few Gonstead chiropractors here in the state and a leading speaker across the country. He's one of the top docs, and he's going to talk about how your spine and your heart have a little something in common. Following that, we're going to do a panel, all the great questions you guys have sent us, and thank you so much, by the way, because we're getting a ton of great questions. There's the number. We're going to go ahead and do a panel discussion and get your questions answered. We should be wrapping up around 12:15, and then remember, please do stay afterwards to join us for the opportunity to ask more Q&A. So on that note, I would like to welcome Dr. Heidi Rula to the stage.
Life spark. Is there really such a thing? What if there was a molecule that was so essential to life that it regulated every system in your body? And what if the rate that you were able to produce this molecule not only controlled the rate you aged, but whether or not you developed such chronic diseases as hypertension, heart disease, Alzheimer's, or even cancer? Now imagine the impact if you could actually improve the rate at which you produced this molecule. Let me introduce you to your life spark, nitric oxide. Its appearance, not very impressive. 1 atom of nitrogen, 1 atom of oxygen that forms a gas. But it is what this molecule does that is so essential to our health. It acts as a messenger, and by doing so, our health is impacted. In 1998, 3 scientists were actually awarded the Nobel Prize for the discovery of how nitric oxide functions in the body. The president of the American Heart Association at the time stated that this was the most important discovery in the history of cardiovascular medicine. So, where does all this magic happen? Where are we producing this gas? Well, the lining of our blood vessels is what we call our endothelium. It's 1 cell layer thick. And it's here we have the machinery to make nitric oxide. And when your body makes this nitric oxide, it's around for a fraction of a second. But during that fraction of a second, it messages the muscular layer in your blood vessels to dilate. And we heard that when our blood vessels dilate, it brings in nutrients and oxygen to the tissues that it supplies and takes away waste, and therefore regulates the health of all of these organs. Every organ system in our body is dependent upon nitric oxide to have optimal function. From the strength of your heart muscle contraction to the delivery of oxygen in your lungs to the rest of your body, to the way that you're able to take up nutrients from your intestinal tract, and the way your immune system can fight off infections and survey cancer cells, all depend on nitric oxide. And for those of you who are starting to get a little bit tired from all of this talk that you've been listening to all morning, you might want to pay attention now, because nitric oxide is important for sexual health. In order to have normal erectile function or to have female arousal, you have to have nitric oxide. Viagra, Cialis, Levitra, all of these drugs utilize nitric oxide pathways in order to have their drug effect. So, understanding how to improve nitric oxide may have just gotten a little interesting for a few of you. As our nitric oxide levels start to decline, you can have various symptoms, that from fatigue, decreased stamina with workouts, poor concentration, irritability, and there it is, erectile dysfunction. So why do our nitric oxide levels fall? Well, one of the most important factors is aging. But the rate at which nitric oxide levels decline with age is directly dependent upon our lifestyle. This graph shows a very important story of three types of individuals. The line in the black represents your average Joe or Jane, and you can see that as a young person, up until about 30, they have optimal levels of nitric oxide production. And then after 30, there's a pretty rapid decline in the ability to produce nitric oxide. The line in the red represents your couch potato, who's eating fast food all day. You can see even as a young person, they do not have optimal levels of nitric oxide production, and it quickly falls with aging for them. But who we want to be the individual represented in the blue line. And that blue line is an individual who lives a healthy lifestyle. And by living this healthy lifestyle, they are able to extend optimal levels of nitric oxide production for an additional decade into their 40s beyond the average individual, and their rate of decline is significantly lower than those who live a less optimal lifestyle. So what is it about our lifestyle that is affecting this nitric oxide production? Well, we've heard so much today about how nutrition is important in health. And we know that the standard American diet, which is what this picture represents, is devoid of all we've heard about superfoods. Well, we don't really see any superfoods on that picture, so we're not getting the nutrients that we need in order to make nitric oxide. You know, this is highly processed with trans fats and saturated fats and high sodium and way too much sugar. And that affects your machinery to make this nitric oxide. We know that movement is important to health. And when we actually move our body, we stimulate the machinery to make nitric oxide. So sitting around is toxic. And it's toxic in terms of how our nitric oxide levels are being produced. Interestingly enough, our mouth serves as a source of nitric oxide production. We have bacteria in our mouth that break down the nitrites and nitrates in our food and convert them into nitric oxide. So if you use mouthwash, you are eradicating those beneficial bacteria. There was actually a study where they had people use mouthwash for 1 week. And at the end of 1 week, those individuals in the study had lowered their rate of nitric oxide production, as well as it showed several points higher of blood pressure, just from 1 week of mouthwash use. So our oral microbiome is essential to health. Another place where these bacteria are playing a role in our health overall is on our skin. When we sweat, the bacteria on our skin break down the ammonia in there, and that serves as, again, another source for nitric oxide production. So we're pretty obsessed with this kind of hygiene that we're in, with using all kinds of hand sanitizers and antibacterial soap to eradicate every possible bacteria we have on our body. But they actually are playing a beneficial role, so we need to chill out on some of these antibacterial products. We know that being overweight is not good for us. And nitric oxide production levels really kind of go along with being overweight or being obese. Individuals in this category have lowered their rate of nitric oxide production because we talked about this endothelial system. When we're overweight, it stresses out this endothelial system, and when the endothelial system is stressed out, we're not going to make the nitric oxide that we need. Millions of Americans take acid blockers, Prilosec, Nexium, Zantac, so that we can eat that standard American diet that otherwise would give us heartburn and belching and bloating. But taking these medicines are not without risk. And one of the risks is that we are, again, taking away a source for nitric oxide production, because we need acid in our stomach to break down our food. And if we don't have that acid, we're not able to take out those building blocks to nitric oxide. So that certainly is something that we need to consider when we go to the cabinet to grab one of these drugs. So how do you know what your nitric oxide level is? How do you know if you're okay? Well, there's very easily obtainable little saliva test strips, which will tell you if you're making good levels of nitric oxide or not. So what do you do to boost these nitric oxide levels? Well, as we heard today, lifestyle is the key to health. And one of the rock stars of any lifestyle program is going to be nutrition. And Haley talked to you all about these superfoods today. And superfoods really are the building blocks for nitric oxide, especially your deep green leafy vegetables that can give you good sources of nitrites and nitrates. And then your deeply pigmented fruits and vegetables. So things like beets, pomegranate, we talked about cacao, all of these type of things are good sources for nitric oxide. When we look at whole systems, how should we, what type of diet should we follow? Well, the diets that have been shown to be most beneficial are going to be the Mediterranean diet and the American Heart Association DASH diet, which really, focus on eating a whole foods diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables and minimizes processed foods. And that's really kind of the important message, is whole foods, colorful, lots of fruits and vegetables. We heard today from Bill and the exercise coach that you can really efficiently improve your fitness through high-intensity interval training. And certainly that also goes along with nitric oxide production. That's probably the most efficient way for you to make and improve your nitric oxide levels. But we know that any form of exercise, just taking a walk in your neighborhood at a leisurely stroll, will improve your nitric oxide levels over sitting all day. And so a very important part of health. Managing your stress with meditation, deep breathing exercises can help lower our cortisol and promote health. But one of the mechanisms at play here is that our sinus cavities have some of the highest concentration of the enzymes that produce nitric oxide. And so when we take in these deep breaths, it actually stimulates these enzymes, and we have higher production rates of nitric oxide after meditating or doing some of these deep breathing things. So that's certainly an easy thing to put on your list to boost your levels. Sauna has been used for a very long time as a promoter of health. And they've shown that people who sauna several times a week have higher nitric oxide production. Well, the mechanism there is that when our body is heated up, it releases a protein that stimulates the enzyme that makes this nitric oxide for us. In Eastern medicine, acupuncture is used for health promotion, just not necessarily even to treat an acute problem. And we know that acupuncture, when you test somebody before and after, that you can see that they have actually improved nitric oxide levels just from an acupuncture treatment. So certainly that may be a mechanism at play as to why it promotes our health. When you're over 40, we know that's when our curve starts to fall off in terms of nitric oxide production. And so we might want to think about utilizing a supplement to help our body increase productivity. There's been a lot of research around some of these beetroot products. Nathan Bryan is a researcher out of the University of Texas, Houston, and he's got some proprietary products like Neo40 and Super Beets that have pretty good data behind them showing that utilizing these products can increase nitric oxide production as well as do things like lower blood pressure, and I've utilized some of these products for people who have erectile dysfunction. In place of a drug, you can utilize a beetroot product and actually improve erectile function. And then there's other things like antioxidants and some of these more plant-based products like pycnogenol, which comes from pine bark, and quercetin, which is a pigment from fruits and vegetables that have some potent kind of boosting activity to them. So this is your prescription for getting your nitric oxide levels up. Follow a whole foods diet, Mediterranean, DASH-type diet. Eat your leafy greens. We heard about greens all day today. They're really important. I have my patients have 1 to 2 cups of leafy greens every day for nitric oxide production. Make sure you're moving every day, whatever it may be, going for a walk, getting up. Get your weight into a healthy zone. Consider doing some meditation, breathing exercises. If you like sauna, certainly this is a good place to help boost your levels. And avoid mouthwash, antibacterial soaps. And if you don't need acid blockers, try not to take them. Work with your doctor to try to get off of them. And if you're over 40, think about nitric oxide supplementation. I have some strips at our booth, so if you want to check out what your nitric oxide levels are, come see me at the LifeScape booth at the end of this. But I thank you for your attention.